I prepared not 1, 2, 3, 4, but 5 full talks for today. Why on earth did I prepare so many? Quite simply because when this event was announced, my first reaction was I must be the best. I want my talk to be the most clapped, to have the most impact, to be the funniest, the most touching. It's a bit like being at the Oscars and wanting to win every single category. How about you? How often do you compare yourself to others? According to the theory of social comparisons developed in 1954 by the psychologist Leon Festinger, numerous studies show that almost 10% of our thoughts involve comparisons. For me, personally, comparing to someone or something else has always meant wanting to be the best in every situation and circumstance. And for some time now, I've had the impression that I'm almost there, at least professionally, that I can consider myself as one of the best in my field. And I thought it would be the holy grail, that it would give me total satisfaction. But alas, I realise now that it's almost the opposite. I'm certainly succeeding, well, at least according to certain criteria, but at what price? I feel like I'm not being honest with myself or with others, and on top of that, I have an unpleasant feeling in my stomach, as if I was slightly disaligned. As a coach, one of the best, of course, I know that to understand what's wrong, I have to dig to get back to the source. So I've tried to dig a bit deeper, trying to understand where does this desire to be the best really come from, and especially the lack of satisfaction that it brings me. I didn't need a therapist to come and tell you that part of it comes from my family. I grew up surrounded by love and competitiveness. We tried to compete and beat each other in every single sport on this planet. And anyone that knows me or my family will be smiling right now, a smile of acknowledgement and recognition. For example, those of you that don't know me so well, have you heard of the Olympic discipline of throwing a shell into a bucket on a beach? That's my family. And writing this talk led to some fabulous discussions with my parents and my sister, taking me back to some certain moments or key moments of my childhood. However, nothing there really struck me as being a key trigger for this desire to be the best. Or maybe I just wasn't ready to see it yet. Who knows? I continued my quest though, when a month ago one of my mentors, my Reiki teacher, organised a group therapy, a talking circle on fear. Having never done one before, I signed up with curiosity. Knowing at least that at the time I'd already written 2 talks for today, but neither seemed to be the best. So I decided to share that fear, the fear of not being the best. And to show you the extent of my issue, I really wanted for my fear to be the best of all the fears shared that night. It's quite worrying. When it was my turn to share, I heard myself say, I'm especially afraid of what it says about me if I'm not the best. Aha, I think we're maybe onto something there. If I'm not the best, then maybe people will see me for who I really am. They'll discover that I'm someone who throws terrible tantrums, screaming and sometimes banging on walls, having to leave the room for fear of saying or doing something I'll regret. That I'm a mum who sees exactly what she should be doing at a given moment in time, but that frequently lacks the emotional intelligence or patience to carry it out. That I too often play the victim with my wife, not taking responsibility for my acts. And that I'm sometimes a useless friend who doesn't listen enough, using the excuse that it's my job to listen all day and in the evening or the weekend I can't really be bothered. So there you go. I'm not the best. Do you still love me? So that's the heart of the matter. I believe that to be loved, I have to be the best, sharing and showing no weaknesses or flaws. And since the morning before my talk, I still didn't know where this was coming from. Thanks to some amazing feedback and above all a kind challenge from a friend I now know. It comes from my perception of my darling dad's burnout. I could see him struggling internally whilst at the same time fighting to appear okay externally. He's such a sensitive person, and when he's in his light, he's, and excuse my French, a fucking genius. He reminds me of someone. Today I'm finding it hard to accept my own vulnerabilities, my own shadow parts, whatever you want to call them, because The little girl in me hasn't yet accepted that her daddy isn't Superman, that he has the right to be human, and that I can love him for the whole of who he is. And in mirror effect, I as an adult can be a human myself and love myself for who I am too. The good, the bad, and the ugly all included. So loving yourself as you are means accepting your humanity, does it? But what does being human mean? For me, it's something about balancing wanting to be perfect and being yourself, making mistakes and learning from them, and falling down and getting back up. How many of you want to be perfect? How many of you want to avoid making mistakes? How many of you don't want to fall down at all? I certainly answer yes to most of those questions often. And so to wrap up, I have 2 pieces of advice for you, for me, for us, in the aim to accept and to live our humanity more. Tip number 1, learn to listen to your body. When I thought that being the best was my holy grail, it was the unpleasant sensation in my stomach that told me that something wasn't quite aligned within me. It was shouting out, trying to tell me, Naomi, haven't you understood? What you want isn't to be the best. You just want to be loved for who you are. So tip number 1, listen to your body. It's full of truths and information ready to be shared. All we need to do is listen. Advice number 2, share your humanity. Many people thank Brené Brown for opening the door to their vulnerability. I want to thank my grandmother, my granny. When I was little, I used to share all the things I wasn't proud of with her. It was often on the doorstep at the end of a weekend with a last-second burst of courage. I could tell her anything, absolutely anything, and she would wrap me in protective hugs. Shame loses its power when it's named in a safe space and that it doesn't change anything. So we can actually also thank Brené Brown for putting words on what vulnerability really is. My granny died the year I turned 15, the same year of my dad's burnout, and the same year that I moved out to France with my family. At that point, I would have needed more than any other point in my life so far to share my fears and doubts more than ever. So I repeat my second piece of advice. Remember, the first is to listen to your body. The second is find someone you trust to share who you really are with. Someone who loves you for your great parts and also your less sexy parts. Someone who accepts you for who you are. Full stop. Today, you've been those people for me. Thank you. Who will it be for you? It was very tempting for me to share this talk by putting on a show, to use humour as a defence mechanism, to only show you my best and to try and win all of those Oscars. But by having shared with you other parts of me, more vulnerable, more sensitive parts, I feel that I'm starting to free myself, to connect more to my humanity, to allow myself to be more fully me. I believe that we compare ourselves because we're afraid of not being loved for who we are. And yes, it's uncomfortable to share who you really are, but it also feels so damn good. And I again believe that, we're all full of beautiful, magical, marvellous things, but we're also full of clumsiness and mistakes too, and that's okay. It's by recognising and accepting the different parts of ourselves that we set ourselves on the path to freeing ourselves from these comparisons and to really connecting with our true selves. For me, by learning to love myself as I am, by welcoming my humanity, I feel that I'm opening myself up to my power, to the world of possibilities for me. Carl Jung said, "Those who look outside dream, those who look inside awaken." I have ambitions, but being the best is no longer one of them. Being me, that is now my new holy grail.